Welcome back to the deep dive. You ready to become literacy superheroes?
Always.
Awesome. Well, today we're diving deep into reading assessments, specifically for those beginning readers, like figuring out the best strategies and all.
Yeah.
And hey, by the way, I saw you shared that Praxis 5205 study guide, so I have a feeling you might be prepping for a certain big exam, am I right?
Oh, you know it. Lots of teachers getting ready to rock that practice.
For sure. Well, consider this deep dive like our little study session. We'll unpack all those tricky assessment concepts and make sure you're feeling super confident walking into that exam room. Sound good?
Sounds like a plan. It's always fascinating to me how much we can learn from simply watching our students read and write,
Absolutely. It's like they're giving us all these clues about their strengths and where they might need a little extra support.
Right, like little detectives.
Yeah.
And speaking of clues, data really is the key to unlocking effective reading instruction.
It's true. Data guides everything. Like it helps us make those smart decisions about what to teach, how to teach it, even how to group our students for maximum learning.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of assessments, it's so important to remember that we're not just collecting data for the sake of it.
Right. Oh, definitely not.
We're using it to empower our students, to help them grow as readers.
Exactly. And I'm thinking about those entry-level assessments like the ones you'll see on the Praxis. I mean, they give us a baseline, right? But then what?
Good question. That's where those formative assessments come in. Like those quick checks for understanding that help us adjust our teaching along the way.
Oh, right. Like those exit tickets we use to see if our students are grasping those key concepts.
Exactly. Think of them as little course corrections on a road trip. You glance at the map, make a slight detour if needed, and you're back on track to reach your destination.
I love that analogy. It's like those little tweaks we make along the way to ensure everyone reaches their reading goals. So we've got those entry-level assessments and those formative assessments, and then I'm guessing those summative assessments are like the final destination, right? Showing us the big picture of what students have learned.
You got it. They help us see how far students have come and inform our planning for future instruction.
So it's like a continuous cycle of assessment, reflection, and adjustment.
Precisely. We're constantly learning from our students and refining our teaching practices to meet their needs.
That makes total sense. Okay, so speaking of meeting their needs, our trusty Praxis study guide mentions flexible grouping. Can you break that down for us? Like, what exactly is it and why is it so important?
Of course. Flexible grouping is all about creating those dynamic groups based on student-specific needs at any given time. It's not about sticking labels on kids or putting them in boxes.
Oh, got it. So it's more about providing that targeted support based on those ever-changing learning needs.
Exactly. It's like assembling a special team of experts to tackle a specific mission.
I like that, like a pop-up reading intervention squad. But I have to admit, sometimes I get a little tripped up on the difference between, homogeneous and heterogeneous groups.
Ah, yes. The classic grouping dilemma. Remember, homogeneous groups, they consist of students with similar skill levels. So it's great for targeting instruction to that specific need.
Right. It's like having a basketball team practicing free throws together to really hone in on that skill.
Exactly. But just like a real game requires a mix of talents, those heterogeneous groups, they allow for peer learning and collaboration. So you get that nice balance.
Okay, so it's about striking that balance, right, between targeted instruction and those rich collaborative learning experiences. Makes sense. But let's get real for a second. What about those students who need a little extra support? Our study guide highlights strategies for those struggling readers and English language learners. Any tips you can share? Anything we might see on that Praxis exam?
Oh, for sure. For those struggling readers, it's all about building that strong foundation. Think reteaching key skills using multisensory approaches.
Multisensory, huh? So like hands-on activities, visuals, movement, that kind of thing.
You got it. Anything that helps bring those concepts to life. And for our English learners, visual aids are crucial.
Oh, yeah, I can see that, especially for building vocabulary and making those connections between words and their meanings.
Right. And don't forget, a student's first language can be a valuable asset. We can use cognates, those words that are similar in both languages, to bridge that gap and build on what they already know.
I love how you're emphasizing that every student brings their own unique strengths and experiences to the classroom. But speaking of strengths, how do we challenge those advanced readers without leaving anyone behind?
Another great question. The Praxis loves to test our knowledge of differentiation. So for those advanced readers, think about providing them with more complex texts, those that require higher level thinking skills.
Right, like challenging them to read between the lines, make predictions, draw conclusions, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Mm.
You can also encourage them to explore different genres, maybe dive into some research projects or lead those book discussions.
It's like giving them a playground of possibilities to stretch their intellectual muscles.
Yeah, exactly. We want to keep those bright minds engaged and
That
challenged.
concludes this free lesson. Click the link in the description to get access to this full lesson and all of the study materials you need to pass in one place.